Thanks for joining me. In this episode of Fight Night Picks, we're joined by flyweight Jose Lugo, who's competing at NEF 36 this weekend in Portland, Maine. And we're also joined by NFL and MMA agent Matt Dodge. So, let's get into it.
It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig Allen.
Great, and welcome to another episode of Fight Night Picks. I'm your host, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, as always, at Craig Allen FNP. And today, it's a special holiday edition of Fight Night Picks. You know, it's 20 below here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It snowed a few days ago, and then that all froze over. So it's really great winter wonderland. It's supposed to snow 15 to 20 centimeters for my drive down to Maine. So, first interview on the show, Jose Lugo, and that's the reason why I'm going down there for NEF 36, coming at you from Aura in Portland. You're not going to want to miss that fight. Jose, 3-0 in his young career, 4-1 as an amateur. All three of those wins as a pro have been in the last calendar year, all of them by finish. So a great conversation with Jose. And then our second guest, something that we've never done here on Fight Night Picks. I always say I bring in the best in journalists and in fighters, but Matt Dodge of Dodge Sports, you can find him on Instagram at Dodge_sports. He's an NFL and MMA agent, so we're going to talk about some of the fighters that he represents, and it's a totally different conversation, line of questioning, than I've had on this show before, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, without further ado, let's get into that interview with Jose Lugo. Man. Awesome, Jose. So, thanks so much for joining me. I mean, in your career, 4-1 as an amateur, you got a chance to avenge that loss against Miguel Trinidad before you went pro. So, I mean, how did you get into MMA in the first place?
Well, it all started with, like, my neighbor. My neighbor came home one day and was like, "Oh, I went to this gym. It's very sick." And I was like, "What kind of gym is it? Because I don't know any gyms in this town." And he's like, "Oh, it's a mixed martial arts gym." What happened was he won a raffle.
Yeah.
So they gave him a free month. And I was curious to check it out. So when I did, they gave me a free week. And it so happened to be George Rivera, which is a UFC name, a big UFC name, especially in my Puerto Rican culture. He's pretty much the first one to ever make it. And yeah, man, as soon as I first class, I was hooked. I was like, wow, there's so much I don't know, and I need to know. Like I crave the knowledge of the martial arts, like all the technique and the training. Like that's what I love to do. I just love learning every day. If I can learn something new every day, it's a good day for me.
So, from the time that you started practicing, you went to that gym, to your first amateur fight, how long was that?
It was a year.
A year?
A year, yeah. I was not gonna step in there. He was not gonna let me step in there unless I put at least 8 months in. 8 months to a year. And you have to come at least 4 to 5 days a week. If you didn't make that deadline, he would not let you hop in there.
That's awesome to hear that you have somebody, you know, behind you like that would kind of put some rules in place. I mean, I've had different fighters, even on here. Speaking to Heather Hardy, she went to Gleason's gym her first week, and 2 weeks later, she had her first fight. So, yeah, it's definitely neat to hear the way that some different gyms do it. But, I mean, 3-0 since you turned pro. And that was about this time last year, all finishes in CS. So how did the opportunity come about for you to fight at or with NEF?
NEF, what happened was I was trying to get a fight for a CES, but everything fell through, so they couldn't really find me an opponent, you know, same skill level. And my girl, they said to me that, like, you know, they had a hard time finding me somebody. So they just let it go. They were like, you know, we'll keep you in mind for the next one. My girl was like, well, you know, you got to stay busy because it's going to be months till the next event. So she looked up all the promotions that had fights after the one that I had booked already. And NEF was the first one to come. Like, one of my teammates is already fighting down there. So it was just perfect. Let's just both take the trip. And it's not that far from here, you know. 2 hours and a half is not that bad.
Yeah, like, I mean, you and I were saying before we came on, you've got 2.5 hours. For me, it's about 5.5. But it's not that bad. And they put on really good shows, too.
Yeah, and I heard it's a beautiful city. So, I mean, it's first time me going there. So, even after the fight, I'm probably going to be a little tourist walking around the town and going to all the restaurants because that's what I want to do is eat.
Yeah, man, it's an awesome spot, and if you get the chance, go to Freeport. I don't know about you, but for me, LL Bean, it's pretty cool to go there and see, the great big boot and all that stuff.
I'll definitely check it out.
100%. So you got the fight. You're taking on Ernesto Ornelas, a guy that I've seen fight in person at some of the previous NEF events. What do you know about him?
Yeah, all I know is that he's very experienced. Like he's had way more fights than me, at least in the professional level. I've had more amateur fights. He's had more pro fights. He's foreign. He's fought some of the toughest guys in New England. He's fought some good guys, you know. He's very scrappy. His movement's really good. But yeah, other than that, that's all I know from him. He's more of a striker, which is his style. And yeah, that's about it.
I mean, for you, are you the type of fighter that game plans differently for each fight, or do you take the same approach? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
No, I don't like going for the same game plan every fight because every fighter is different. Like I can't do what I did to my last opponent, to Ernesto, because he's not the same guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I dictate what the game plan is. Like my coaches give me a game plan. We go through a game plan, and I kind of pursue it depending on what he gives me in the first round.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to change your whole game plan within the first 2 minutes. You're like, all right, this is not gonna work with this guy. I gotta switch it all up. So what helps me is I'm very well rounded. I try to train pretty much every different style, at least the basics of everything, just to get better. If they take me to the ground, I want to be able to wrestle. I want to be able to do the jiu-jitsu. If we stand up, I want to be able to move well and strike well and dodge and block. So I pretty much work on everything, and that's what I'm not too good at one thing. I'm just balanced all the way across.
Yeah, and that seems like a good way to get ready for it too.
That's pretty much how I've won my 2 titles, and I've stayed undefeated in my pros. I'm just balanced. There's not one thing that's higher than the other. I keep it right. Everything, I train it equally. 2 days this, 2 days striking, 2 days grappling, 2 days strength conditioning. And if I'm not tired enough, the other day I'll add 1 or the 2 depending on my opponent. Since my opponent's a striker, I'll do 3 days striking, 2 days grappling, and then I'll add at least 2 or 3 days of strength and conditioning in between all those days.
And I mean, getting ready for this fight, you're representing BST MMA and Fitness in Mendon, Massachusetts. Who are some of the people that you're training with to get ready for this fight?
Well, I train with a bunch of guys at Triforce, like Cody Norby, John Duma, Andre the Sensation. I train with a lot of tough guys, my teammates, Richard Santiago, which is 7-1, Chris Montino, 7-2, which put on dominant performances like 2 weeks ago. Brandon Vogel, lost a split decision, but put on a great show for Cage Titans. All my teammates are pretty much tough, and then yeah, and I like I said, I travel. I go to Triforce. Sometimes I go to Lausanne and I'll squeeze it in. There's a lot of UFC fighters do their camps there.
Yep.
There's a lot of tough dudes.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because on all the different shows I've been hosting lately, having some of the media members from around the New England area. Of course, I'm in the Maritimes here in Canada, not that far away, and it seems like there's all these different camps and all these different places you can go in New England to train. And it's the same type of guys all the time, and they get all sorts of different work no matter which gym you go to. It seems like a really good system you have there.
It is. It definitely is. I mean, mixing it up definitely keeps you humble, because you get catch by surprise with everybody. When you go to stay in one gym and you stay there all the time, you get comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not the same. When you go to other places, you're just not comfortable anymore, and it just, what they throw at you, you're like, oh, whoa, I've never seen that before. Or they'll catch you in a new submission that you're like, what the hell did you just do to me? So it just keeps you sharp, and it keeps you humble, and know that you can get caught, that you can get better, you can improve in what you're lacking, because there's, like I said, there's so many other talent out there. there's somebody bound to beat you. I mean, it's a hard sport to stay undefeated in.
So, kind of a tough question here. I mean, young in your pro career, 3-0. You fought at flyweight before. You've had some catch weights at 130. We've seen what's been going on in the UFC with the men's flyweight division. Is it there? Isn't it there? I mean, today the news was they signed Luis Smolka back, but he's going to be fighting at bantamweight on short notice, and that's going to be the rest of his career. For you moving forward, would that be something you'd consider moving up to bantamweight?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, if UFC gave me the call and was like, "Hey, you got to fight at 135," I will pack at least 10 or 15 pounds more of muscle. So I like the weight cut is still the same, you know. Yeah, all I pretty much have to say in my routine is a little bit less cardio and more powerlifting.
Yeah, for sure.
I used to be a lot bigger in high school, so the only reason why I stayed this lean is because I've been so dominant at the 125 division. And yeah, I mean, I'm strong for a 135er and a 125er. All my teammates can vouch for it. People I train with can vouch for it. So I'm sure I'll do very fine. I'll do fine at 135 also. Plus, I'll be able to eat a little more, so I'll have more energy.
Exactly. And so NEF 36 coming up from Portland, Maine on Saturday. What can what can fans expect in your fight against Ornelas?
Hey, they can expect a finish because I don't tend to leave it to the judges. I'm in hostile territory. I don't know how the judges are over there. It's definitely his home. They know him. So if anything, you can expect a finish or a hell of a war because I'm going for the finish from the first belt to the last belt. That's just how it goes. I have 3 finishes in my pros, and I'm trying to keep that going for the end of the year so I can go 4-0 and 4 finishes within a year from my first fight. And yeah, that's the goal, man. And every time I say something, I 100% stay focused to it and try to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a great calendar year so far for you, and I'm really looking forward to the fight. Thanks so much for joining me, Jose. Good luck with the weight cut and the rest of your week. For fight fans at home, where can they find you online? And if you've got any friends, fans, sponsors to shout out, let us know.
Hey, they can find me on Instagram, Jose El Salvaje 08, and Twitter, El Salvaje Lugo. Facebook, just look me up, Jose Lugo. And I'd like to thank my sponsors, Lobaser and Ferreira, which is the company I work for. They've always supported my fighting. They sponsored me since pretty much my amateur career. So, I mean, I love those guys. Also, Coping with Lorengo Malaysia, which is the organization I donate money to when I make shirts. And my daughter was born with that. I was born with that. So I like to spread awareness for those guys. That's, again, copingwithlorengomalaysia.org. You can go check them out. Also, New Beginnings program, which is they educate people about alcohol and drug abuse. I love that. I mean, they will forever be my sponsor because I feel like that's a very important thing, especially with all the things family go through. And yeah, I mean, those are my favorite sponsors. I have so many. I can't sit here for like I have like 13 sponsors, but I'll shout one more out. Igdalia Medina Photography, because she's taken pretty much all my pictures since my amateurs, like I said, till now. So, you know, thank you, Iggy. I love you. Love you all, guys. And thank you for sponsoring me. I appreciate you guys and hope to give a show to Maine and NEF and make new fans for sure.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, brother.
Great conversation with Jose. I can't wait to have him back on the show again, and I like how excited he is to go to Portland. You know, for me, it's about 5.5 hours from Fredericton to get down there in Maine, and, you know, when we were growing up, that was always a spot to go, was Portland. You're not too far away from Boston. There's all sorts of things to do in Portland. Even now, I still go down there just to vacation in the summer and different points in the year as well. It's a great city for sure. Or is a great venue. You know, the very first MMA event that I covered live was, if you can believe it, back in June, and that was covering NEF 34. I had a great experience. Matt and Nick put on great shows, and I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, that card, I mean, you've got Jose and Ernesto Ornelas on the main card, but you also have at the very top 2 title fights. You've got the Ryan Sanders. He's going to be looking to retain his lightweight belt, taking on Jacob Bond, 7-5. And then you also have a first. I haven't heard of an organization doing this yet. A cruiserweight title fight at 225 between Ross Hilton and Jorgen De Castro. So it should be something great. I mean, there's something on this card for everyone. I know we've seen the Chris's Angels, different vignettes and different things out there online. Of course, you have 3 different women competing on the undercard, amateurs. From Young's MMA in Bangor. So there's something for everyone on this card. And like I said, NEF, they put on great shows, and it's their last one of 2018. And I don't think there's very many tickets left. So I'm going to be headed down tomorrow on Friday, and yeah, it's supposed to snow 15 to 20 centimeters, so I'm going to take my time, going to enjoy the sights and the scenery, and hopefully get down there nice and safe for the show on Saturday. So without further ado, let's get into the interview with Matt Dodge. It was something that we've never had on this show before. Matt was a great sport, and I really enjoyed having him on, and it's something different, you know, to bring to the show, and I'm looking forward to having him back on as well. He was a great guest for sure. So let's hear from Matt. Matt, thanks so much for joining me. So for those of, you know, the fans that might not be totally familiar with you, you're more of a kind of behind the scenes type of guy. Every now and again we see some agents pop up here and there, but CEO of Dodge Sports, certified MMA and NFL agent. How'd you get into this kind of line of work?
Thanks, Craig. And look, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on. When I was a young kid, as many people, kind of wanted to get into the sports world, I was always interested in things kind of beyond playing, though. When I was a kid, I played those video games where you would be a GM, right? Not necessarily playing Madden or, you know, NBA 2K or whatever it may have been. I was more interested in just the behind the scenes aspect of being close to sports. So when I had the opportunity at 18, I had an opportunity to intern. It was definitely, I forced myself into an opportunity, really. And I think that's how a lot of people have to start. I reached out to probably every NFL agent in and around the New England area, more specifically New York, and just said, hey, I'm willing to work for free. I just want a shot. I just want a shot. I just want a chance. And not many even get back to you. And if they do, they get back to you with a no. No, thank you. Maybe later type thing. But there was one agent that took a chance on me in New York, and I was able to commute in about 45 minutes from the Bronx into the city every day, worked hard, long hours, 12, sometimes 14-hour days, just to start to build the connections that fortunately I still have today. So, you know, it started at a young age, but it's kind of that never say never attitude and persistence and hard work that's, you know, eventually got me to the point where I am today.
And every now and again, we see kind of a transition from agent to GM. While it doesn't happen all the time, I mean, we've seen it with the Mets here recently. We've seen it in hockey as well. And I mean, for you, you know, kind of concerned about MMA and NFL, I mean, I'm sure you get asked this question all the time, but how similar is your career to that of Spencer Strassmore from Ballers?
I wish it were more similar. No. You know, that show is very entertaining. And I think it highlights a lot of the potential pitfalls that agents can fall into and a lot of athletes can fall into. And that's as it relates to money, access, and the bad, really, that's part of the industry. There's a lot of that goes on. What I like to kind of do is look past that a little bit more. The group of guys that I bring on to Dodge Sports, they have to be good character guys in the first place. And you can see on the show, Spencer Strassmore tends to unfortunately not get the greatest good character guys, the greatest character guys in general. And as a result, you see some of the issues and the things that he has to fix. The industry, though, I mean, I will say it's come a long way, and a lot of regulations, especially in the NFL world, have cleaned it up a little bit. It's making it's more difficult now for agents to get certified. The test is more difficult. You need an advanced degree now, either a law degree or a master's degree, even to sit to the exam. But as it relates to the UFC and MMA, as probably all your listeners know, there's a lot of talk about unions right now and kind of regulating and structuring it. But as it sits today, it's still kind of an open market area. I've seen a little bit of the UFC side of things start to go in that Spencer Strathmore path, as you've probably seen from, you know, some of the Khabib things and some of the other agents that are out there in the spotlight right now, and how some of them are conducting themselves. But look, you have a choice. You can either go left or right. You can either go the good way or the bad way, and you're faced with a lot of those choices from the jump, and you'll continue to be as you get more and more successful. hopefully we'll continue to make good decisions and continue to bring on the right guys and not have to worry about the issues that Spencer Strathmore had to.
So, I mean, I wasn't going to go this direction, but you kind of brought it up. And I mean, in your capacity, you're truly an agent. You have to consider yourself as an agent. You can't throw out other names. It's just like, an engineer is an engineer. It's a professional designation. And somebody who, wants to be an engineer can't just call themselves an engineer. In your capacity, the word promoter, that can't come up, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's problems. There's problems with that. I'm not going to say names, but there are obviously people in the industry that have moved from promoter to agent, have held both titles at the same time. Yeah, I mean, look, as an agent, you can't, it's conflict of interest, right? In what you do. I like to say that the promoters that I work with, though, are genuinely very good guys and gals. And again, I think, things are starting to clean themselves out a little bit more. Some of the organizations are starting to really become more and more professional as to how they handle their business from a promotional side. So those are the promotions that I like to get my guys involved in.
100%. So I mean, dealing with NFL players, dealing with MMA fighters, what are some of the services that you offer to your clients? And, do they differ a lot between the sports?
Sometimes I joke about this. It's kind of a certified babysitter role, but you really have to embrace it. Because if you want to be close to the sport and you want to make an impact, it's really one of the two biggest things that I wanted to do. I wanted to make a positive impact on people's lives and be close to the sport. So as a result, you deal with fun things and some of the glamorous things like you're alluding to with ballers. But then you deal with a lot of behind the scenes, stressful and not so fun things like, helping somebody get a mortgage, right? Helping somebody handle parking bills that are 5 years overdue, and a fighting promotion is not letting him fight in the state because there's something out for him, right? So from a services standpoint, it ranges from the typical things that your listeners would probably think about, which is contract negotiations, really finding fight offers, finding the right fight offers. That's important too. You don't want to just put somebody up into an opportunity that you don't think they're ready for. Marketing, which is, in my opinion, probably the key differentiator that Dodge Sports has over a lot of the others in the industry. We like to say we're building brand name athletes. We're trying to connect these athletes with reputable brands to help them continue to grow themselves while they're fighting, and then also while they're not fighting, because at the end of the day, it's about their brand, and it's about continuing to have a good, successful run in the sport and out. But then you're dealing with, family situations oftentimes, trying to manage that, handling some of the logistics around fighting. I mean, if you look at a fight, they've got shorts, they have T-shirts, they have banners, they have to get there, they have to get home, they have to have insurance, they have to have everything. So really just handling some of the not so fun stuff for them so that they can focus on what makes them really great, and that's fighting.
So, I mean, you kind of touched on it there, and in combat sports, compared to other sports and, most of the North American sports that you and I are really familiar with, there's an off season. And with MMA, it's year round, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy. And another thing about it is, a fighter, opportunities can present themselves during their career in a totally different fashion than, say, a baseball player, an NFL player. You go up through the ranks in high school, and then it's college, and then you're into the professionals. But, in MMA, you can get into your 30s and not develop into a UFC or a Bellator fighter, and then all of a sudden, great chance arises. So for a young fighter who's coming up through the ranks, what are some of the steps that you guys would take in order to grow a personal brand?
So think about all of the things when you're young and you're just starting out, you just turned pro or you're an amateur, all of the things that cost you money to be a part of this sport. That's your gear, that's your mouth guard, that's your car insurance, that's your, all of these things that cost money. Well, you are an athlete and you have a platform. Reach out to companies that do those things and look for trade relationships. Look for ways that you can be creative in kind of getting those things paid for themselves, and as in turn give them a platform for exposure. So many of the guys that I have, I recently signed a guy in Canada, actually, two guys. One is, his name's Anthony Romero. Absolute pleasure to be working with, and not to mention a stud. Will probably be Contender Series ready in about 6 months now. But if you look at his banners, he has just every single thing that you can imagine that you pay for sponsored, because he's smart, he's business minded, and he's a 20-year-old kid that doesn't have a whole lot of money and is trying to earn his way to one of those big shows where the purses are decent, right? You're fighting for more than $500. You know, some of these organizations, you're not fighting for anything. You're fighting for ticket sales, right? So just be creative in kind of the areas that you're going after, and look for ways that you can trade your value, and it doesn't have to be monetary, for the platform that you can provide a lot of these people. In turn, use social media as well. Social media we live in a time right now where everybody has access to anything. And with the rise of Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and I'm sure by the end of this call, there will probably be more that pop up. But utilize those, because that's your fan base. That's where the promoters are. That's where the sponsors are. And access is on a different level than it's ever been today.
Yeah, I find MMA, coming from a Twitter background, going on to Instagram here recently, it's been quite a big change for me personally. The news doesn't get out as quick. It's a totally different market. It's something that I've had to try and grasp and try and get better at too. I mean, you definitely have to work at it. And as a young athlete or a developing athlete, it's definitely really important to grow that personal brand, like you had said. So more of a question for you, more so than, an athlete. From the perspective that you're in, you look at MMA, you look at the NFL, you offer all these different client services, but do you have to take a totally different tailored approach to an MMA foray, or to a contract, or to negotiations than you do with football?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the sports, the sports are just in different realms. One's an established, NFL is established. When you speak to, sponsors and whatnot, it's a different conversation, because there's a specific target audience for that. It's something that's mature. It's a little bit more guaranteed. Whereas the MMA side of things sometimes has a negative connotation to it. Brands sometimes don't want to associate themselves with, barbaric, however people want to really see it. But in all reality, MMA is truly mixed martial arts. It truly is an art form, and if anything, it's probably the most beautiful sport there is, and the most technical sport that there is. And a lot of times it just takes time and education and knowledge to share with different people who are trying to get into the industry, so that they understand what this is. Now, there's a huge opportunity for UFC and MMA, really MMA in general, into 2019 with its partnership with ESPN. I think it's going to make things more mainstream. It's not going to obviously put MMA on the same level as NFL, but I think it's a darn good step to get them to where they should be, because the quality of athlete there, I mean, is unrivaled, really.
It's definitely great for the U.S. market up here, in Canada, internationally. It's kind of, we're treading lightly and we're waiting for 2019, because it's a given, you know what to expect in the States. ESPN's king, but up here, it's either going to be TSN, a mix with Fight Network, a bit of Fight Pass as well. It's, you got to look a little bit further and dig for some of those fights. So heading into 2019, what are some of the things that you have on your plate in terms of, like major events, and where can we catch some of the athletes? I mean, you mentioned EFC heavyweight. What are some of the other things that you've got going on?
Yeah, so I mentioned Anthony Romero. He's in one of the organizations that generally handles a lot of Northeast stuff, which is King of the Cage. Yeah. And they're a fantastic platform for a lot of Canadian fighters, because they do a lot of fights in Western New York. A lot of the guys from Toronto and Ontario, they generally bring them there, give them a really good platform. I believe they use MAV TV, which is, I think, goes out to some million type viewers for that. And I think they're also forging a partnership with UFC Fight Pass shortly. So Anthony Romero's next fight should be for the belt, the 155 belts. And we're looking at targeting February for that. Jared's fight, as you mentioned, is the end of this year in December. He's fighting a former UFC fighter, Ruin Potts, who's really just a legend in South Africa. And it's been great to see some of these platforms and internationally really rise the ranks, and some of these promotions really step up and start to bring guys from all over the world. You've probably seen One Championship, obviously sending a lot of the flyweights are going out there. Brave is starting to come up. ACB has kind of taken a pause on some things because I think there's some issues there. But in regard to the rest, we recently signed a very, very good blue chip, which is his nickname, prospect, Will Morris, out of Houston, Texas. I've never seen a more athletic person in my life. Also a former Bellator winner got there. So we should have a really good opportunity for him. Another Canadian, Adrian Valaka. And the guy I'm most excited about right now, and I think everybody should take notice in, is the UFC bantamweight Andre Ewell. He just went down to Brazil in the end of, I think it was the end of September, maybe even October, and beat former champion Renan Barão in his own country on his UFC debut. So we're looking for a top 15 matchup for him next, and that would be in January on one of the ESPN cards in his hometown of Anaheim, California. So stay tuned for all those guys.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that was a great win for Ewell there in Sao Paulo. I mean, crazy former champ Renan Barão debut, gets the win. And like you said, I mean, some of those international promotions really growing. Of course, we saw it here in New Brunswick, UFC's debut a couple of weeks ago with Don Madge coming in, almost unheralded, crazy finish over T. Edwards. And, the power of social media and the internet. That was one of the biggest videos I had posted on YouTube, was a conversation with Don after the fight. So great stuff there. Great stuff for, the rise of international MMA. And like you said, I mean, representing some clients from some of those other organizations. It's a great thing to see. So Matt, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. I'm going to have you back on if I've got any more, type of agent questions. There's always some of them. For some of the fighters who might be looking for representation, or for anybody that might have any questions, where can they find you online?
Mostly Instagram. In my opinion, it's the best platform for communicating. As you mentioned, a lot of shifting and from people from Twitter and now to Instagram, and Facebook to Instagram. And now, obviously, Instagram was bought by Facebook, so it's big. So it would be at Dodge_sports. And you guys can find me on the Instagram there. The website is dodgesports.com. Very, very simple. And I am more than happy to communicate with really anybody who tuned in and watched this. I was fortunate enough at a young age to have a mentor and somebody that helped show me the ropes. So I'd love to give back. And if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them. And awesome. I'd love to be back again, Craig.
Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate Matt coming on the show. That was a great interview, and it's great to get that different perspective. Like I said, I try and get the best in journalists and in fighters, and if I can get the best in agents as well, I mean, it's something special. Every now and again, you'll hear of an agent in the media or whatnot. It happens a little bit more in baseball. I mean, I've always been a really big baseball fan. You hear maybe Scott Boras calling for a contract. You see Brody Van Wagenen going from being an agent. I had mentioned that in the conversation. He was an agent. Now he's the general manager of the New York Mets. So you see it every now and again. And in MMA as well, you'll hear an agent maybe say something. It gets picked up in the media. But I really appreciate that different perspective. And, when people tend to think of agents, you might think of the representative that's there to sign the contract, or, maybe make some bookings, whatnot, get a fight booked. But in certain cases, it's even more than that, booking travel accommodations, working on a fighter's brand or an NFL player's brand. And I really appreciate Matt coming on and sharing that with us. And I hope he can come back and join us again. So make sure you find him on Instagram at Dodge_sports. So that just about does it for this episode of Fight Night Picks. Make sure you check out some of the content, fightnightpicks.net. I'm going to be in Portland, Maine this weekend at NEF 36. I am so excited for it. It's a really, really great card. Also appreciate Jose Lugo for joining us on the show. So make sure you check out the content there. We've also added some different written content from Ty O'Keefe, who I host the Dialogue call-in shows with every single day. Make sure you check those out. I post the links every day at Craig Allen FNP on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find them on Ty's Twitter page as well, at Above the Fold Ty. And hopefully I didn't alienate everyone with the Canadians hat, but it matches the holiday sweater. And like I said, it feels like -20 out there today. It's about -10 or so. So it's really cold, and we've got a lot of snow in the forecast here in New Brunswick. So hopefully hopefully you have a great weekend. Stay safe and stay warm as well. And we'll come back with another episode of Fight Night Picks. And this one as well, it's going to be an audio podcast. So you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, CastBox, and various other podcatchers. They get picked up by just about every single one of them. So have a great weekend, and we'll be back again early next week.